Okay, hey guys, Squeaks the Corgi here. You may have heard of me, you may not have. Honestly, I don't blame you if you haven't. I wanted to talk a bit today about my current biggest project right now, which is called PolarDread. Now, PolarDread is a very strange project, to say the least. It started a couple of years ago, actually. I think the first conception of it was way back in, 2017 or so. This was back when it was centered around a place called Great Wolf Lodge. We had just visited the place with my cousin, actually, and we were just like, yo, this would make, an awesome FNAF game. Mostly because of the animatronics in the lobby. They have a couple of them. I think the scariest one out of all of them was the tree with that dead-ass stare. So we were just like, you know what, we're gonna make a game out of this. We did. It was shit. So we decided, we should, shelve this. I already had, a project that I was working on at the time. 3 years later, 2020. Yeah, and a very familiar pandemic hits. We're all locked inside, and I think 2-3 months into the quarantine, I was just like, you know what, this idea I had wasn't actually that bad. So I spoke to a couple friends about the idea, kind of pitched it to them, and originally I really wanted to use Oculus's new hand tracking feature for it. And I also wanted to try it in VR to see if I could learn how to program an Unreal Engine. So we started on the project back then. It was only called Sub-Zero, and initially there was only going to be 3 different characters, being Slush, Snark, and Perry. Then we got a 4th character. Then we got a 5th one, and a 6th one, and a lot of other ones. And after a while, I kind of just lost track. The game was very, very much a victim of scope creep, as in we had no idea what we were doing when setting it up for the first time, and the game that released was a total disaster as a result. So let's go a little more in depth on the story of this game. So the idea for this game is that you'll be playing as someone who isn't named, who goes to a warehouse for a place called Sub-Zero, which was the name of the resort at the time. And the idea is that you'd be hunted down by all of these killer animatronics, FNAF tech shenanigans and all that. And then from there, we decided to design each of the characters. We gave them all unique mechanics, which a lot of which transitioned over into the current project, PolarDread, but I'll get into that a little bit later. So, the idea is that the first night would start you off with just the door and the vent character to deal with, and the current version of PolarDread actually does the same thing, albeit with more polish, but with Sub-Zero, you're just kind of thrown in with a notepad, buttons, and then a button behind you that closes the vent. It was a total disaster. Now, this is where I would introduce Snark and Perry. Snark is a grouchy fox, Arctic fox specifically, and what he does is he will stand by the doorway, and if he's there and you hear him talking, just push a button and you shut him out. Perry is very similar, but you can hear him with a radio static sound, and whenever you hear him behind you, you just press the button and you shut him out. There's also a light button back there so you can see where he's coming from in the vent. It was rudimentary stuff, to say the least. So, we got this demo at the door, and people were giving it positive feedback at the time, because I guess people had no standards back then. And then decided to introduce level 2, or Night 2, whatever you want to call it. This is where we introduced 2 new characters, being Slush, or Slush Bear as people know him, and Floppy, who is a wall-mounted rabbit head. She basically would make noise, and you would have to pick up an object and throw it at her to shut her up. And then there's the other character, Slush, where you have to hide under the table when he enters into the room. This was something I was so proud of at the time when I got it done, and I'm still proud of how well it flows into the rest of the game. And then after that, we introduced Night 3, which has 2 new characters. Whack, who's a mole, and then we got Antler, who is a deer. Antler is very similar to Floppy, they just make noise, you throw an object and they shut up. And then Whack, basically, he's a blind character, but he could still see you somehow in this game. Yeah, like I said, Sub-Zero is a total nightmare. But we got them all implemented and everything. And I should mention, while I was working on this, I was also making a VHS series about the game at the time. Total train wreck, by the way, I should mention. And then Night 4, we introduced 1 new enemy called Buddy, who is able to hijack your cameras, and then he's also a door enemy who you have to shut out of the room. There's not really a whole lot else left in Sub-Zero. There's the lore, of course, which I never really elaborated on, with a guy named Michael Tone, who owns the resort, who would go around killing people and then hiding their bodies in the animatronics, but we've heard this done a million times. So, that's kind of as far as I went with that one. January of 2021, I decided I wasn't really happy with this game anymore. So I took all the code and everything I made for it, and I trashed it, and I decided to start completely from scratch. This is where PolarDread comes into play, and it was probably the first project I made that I was really happy with. So, same sort of situation and everything, but all of the designs, models, and animations have been improved on tenfold. We had got unique voice actors for each individual character, and they all just look so much more, visually impressive. And they have a very distinct look from most FNAF content, which I'm really happy with. And of course, with a new game comes a new story. So in this game, you play a soul named Sam. They are completely anonymous, and this was done with very precise intentions. Now, one of the biggest issues with a lot of FNAF fan games is that you often play as a character with a set identity, set gender, all that stuff. And it's good if you want to tell a story, but at the same time, you don't really feel immersed in that character because you know that you're not them. As a result, I went the route of having a silent protagonist who goes by Sam, which is a gender-neutral name. I gave them blue hands in the game, so I don't have to switch either a white or black skin tone. You can just kind of leave that up to interpretation. And any depictions of Sam that are done through pictures and everything, they don't actually have a set skin tone. And this was done so that you can kind of see them the way that you want to see them. Like if you're white, Sam is basically white. If you're female, Sam's female. Sam is basically meant to be you, the player, you know what I mean? So, that's why I went the route of having them be completely anonymous. As for the actual story of the game itself, I don't want to go too far into it, but the idea is that you are talking to someone over the phone named Isaac. Isaac is not really the most mentally sound person, and he doesn't really like you. And as a result, he's always snappy to you over the phone calls and shows no sympathy for your situation. Now, I can't really spoil the rest of the game, but I should say that we've gone out of our way to improve literally everything about the previous versions of the game. You have an actual camera map now, some of the mechanics have been refined, we've added new characters like Vicky and the Lemmings, and there's just so much more content, and it's just so much more fun. So now that we've got the story out of the way, I want to tackle some of the elements that I had in mind while setting together the gameplay. So the first thing I should mention is distance, because this is very important for a VR game like this. You're normally rooted in the same spot during this game, and you have a force grabbing mechanic that allows you to grab things from a distance, so you don't really have to worry typically about moving around your environment. But of course, this does come with a couple pitfalls, where sometimes the vent is a bit too far away from you, so if you're hiding and something's in the vent, you have to get up and push the button. And I know that sounds like a hassle, but this was a very intentional design choice. It gives you incentive to always be moving. Games like Pistol Whip and Beat Saber always give you a good incentive, but in games like FNAF VR, you're just standing on the spot the whole time. With a game like this, I wanted to kind of flip the script a little bit, give the player a reason to always be moving around their play space, and as a result, that is why we factored distance into a lot of the mechanics in this game. It's also why a lot of it is just like a button press that you physically have to touch, as opposed to grabbing something from a distance. The throwing mechanics and everything, we've improved them by adding in the force grabbing, so if an object is ever too far away from you, you can just grab it from a distance and then toss it at an enemy, and you never really run out, unlike the previous game, where you just have to listen to screaming the whole night. And then Vicky also adds in the mechanic of the TV, where whenever the TV turns on, it's a prompt like in Flunkies 2, where you have to hide under the table before they show up, or else they'll kill you. The Lemmings are a completely new addition to this game, and they are little wooden dolls of, lemmings. And what they do is they will jump onto your face, and if they're on there for too long, they will kill you. So the way to get rid of them, of course, is to grab them off your face and throw them, because that's what anyone would do in a situation like that. Now, by some miracle, when I submitted this game to Oculus App Lab, they actually accepted it. So if you have a VR headset like a Quest, you can actually get this on their store right now for free. It's just a demo right now with only 4 nights, no story cutscenes or anything. But we do want to go a little more into detail with it, and hopefully in a month or two, update the game with new content, meaning a full game, cutscenes, and an ending. I'm not going to go too much into detail about what that ending is, I want you guys to all see that for yourself. Now, as for the game itself and what its future is, now that it's on App Lab and everything, I can definitely see myself pushing out the game completely. Like, we are so close to being done. We just have 1 night left to finish, and then we're good to go. But as for the future of this game, the most I can really say about it is that I hope that you guys will stick around for the ride. We're putting a lot of work into making it something special, something unique in this kind of, dried up field. And we wanted it to be something fun for you guys. So, right now we are working on pushing out the final night. Beta testing's already been going pretty well, and I think that if we can get it done and push it out to all of you guys, even if the game doesn't succeed, we'll still probably be happy with the fact we managed to get something done. This has been my dream game to make, and it's been so long since I've really felt happy making a game like this, and now that it's almost out, it's just so crazy to think about. I should mention, by the way, that if you want to keep updated with the game's development and everything, we do have a Discord, we have a Twitter, and we also have a Patreon if you want to help chip in a couple of dollars to help cover the funding of the game. But yeah, it's still gonna remain free though, don't worry about that. I can't really think about much else to say right now concerning the game's development, because I don't want to go into like spoiler territory or anything. I'm just hoping that you guys will enjoy Night 5, you know, meeting your best buddy and all. And yeah, yeah, I'm excited. I'll see you guys all later, hopefully with a new project update or something next video. I do apologize that all my projects are taking so long right now. I've been so hyper-focused on getting PolarDread up the door for all you guys to play. And yeah, it's been fun though. Hopefully guys you enjoy it.